My husband and I have not been doing well lately. In fact, as I write this, I realize we hadn't been doing well for a while. We had our normal struggles, like every couple, but lately, they had turned from bearable differences to utter annoyance. It didn't help we work long hours away from each other now. I've been so busy drowning in manuscripts to edit since my promotion last year. I spent 70 hours holed up in the attic we converted into my office when we moved to this small town, editing other people's work, helping them achieve their dreams of publishing their stories while I waste away here. We moved to this desolated farm home for his job. The university in the city had the best archaeology program but the worst cost of living. We could only afford to buy a rundown farmhouse outside of the city, and since I can do my job at home, I gave up my dream home we bought when we first married. He said it will only be for a few years, then we could move back. I was beginning to think otherwise as he spent more and more time at school. He told me they found a potential dig site where they thought there would potentially be a huge discovery. I began to believe him less and less each time I smelled perfume on his shirts and found changes of clothes in his car. He started to call me crazy, told me the stories I have been reading are getting to my head, that I spend too much time alone and shouldn't make friends. But there was no one around to befriend, and he was supposed to be my best friend and support anyways. We had once shared a dream of writing a book based on his research and digs. It had been a long time since we talked about that dream. So, when he told me he was going with his team to the site in another country to help them excavate what they thought was an undiscovered ancient tomb, I felt a ray of hope. I told him it would be a great start to our book, but he laughed at me. He told me the school would be publishing the findings in their own research paper, and his team would help him write it. I was hurt, but he told me to get over it and focus on my own work. Apparently, he had grown tired of my hours. He said he never saw me anymore, and I felt like a stranger. At that moment, I realized I felt the same way. He told me he would be back in 3 months, and I told him I wouldn't be here. 3 months alone with nothing but my work sounded like hell. That wasn't the first time he struck me, if I'm being honest. He had hit me a few times before that, whenever I had brought up the perfume or the time I found another woman's panties in his car. This was the first time he broke something though. I suppose it was my own fault. I had tried to crawl away and I knew better. Just let him get it out of his system. It's faster that way. But there was a look in his eyes that night I hadn't seen before. They burned with such hatred. I just had to get away. Maybe it was because I said I was going to leave. Maybe it was the beer he had with dinner. Either way, as I crawled out to the enclosed porch, he took the door and slammed my leg in it. He brought me to the doctor the next day, and I got a cast on. I said it was an accident. Old farmhouse and all. Slipped on the stairs. No one thought any wiser, since everyone in my town thought my husband was going to put them on the map with his upcoming dig. If I'm being honest, I'm sure he did it to make sure I couldn't leave. He went on his trip, and I stayed at the farm with my never-ending stacks of manuscripts. He called a few times to give me an update and let me know he scheduled an appointment with a town doctor to take my cast off the day before he was scheduled to come home. The last time he called was to tell me they broke ground and expected to get into the tomb that week. I had heard the woman in the background calling for him on that call, and my silence told him so. I didn't hear from him the rest of the trip. I wish I could say I left then, but I didn't. I stayed, scared of when he returned, but even more afraid of what he would do if I left. I have no family and no friends. He is the only person in my life. All I have is my work. The day the doctor came to take my cast off, I learned they had found what they were looking for. Apparently, the whole town was talking about it. News crews were reporting the find all over the world. My husband was famous. I waited for him to come home the next day. He had taken the car to the airport and left it there so I couldn't pick him up. I heard the tires roll down the drive, and my heart raced. I had to make sure the house was spotless and dinner was ready. His favorite, hamburgers. He rarely ate anything else at home. My work had been done early today, so that all my attention could be on him. I didn't hear his heavy footsteps as he came into the house, which was strange. Suddenly, he had appeared in the kitchen where I waited. I stood, startled, and gaped at him. His hair was much longer, his face a bit gaunt, but it was his eyes that startled me. They seemed to burn as he gazed around the room, not with anger or annoyance I was used to seeing, but with actual light. His gaze fell on me, and I felt myself becoming small. I had no idea what he was going to do now.
"You made dinner."
He sounded surprised, hopeful. I nodded. He smiled.
"Thank you."
I felt my knees go weak at the look on his face. It was far different from any other he had ever given me, and not once in our life together had he thanked me. We ate, and he asked about my day. We chatted, and I found myself becoming less and less tense. He had changed somehow, though I couldn't put into words how or why. That night, as we got into bed, I watched as he blushed as we got under the covers. He seemed nervous, almost boyish as he wrapped his arms around me. I melted into his embrace unlike any time before. Weeks went by like this, with the occasional visitor asking about the dig. TV crews came asking for interviews, and students came looking for support. Apparently, he had been offered a lot of money from the school, since one of these days he asked me if I would like to quit my job.
"We can work on that book we always planned on doing. I found so much there, and I want the world to know about it."
I couldn't believe it. I hesitated, and he saw it. I braced for his wrath, but only received his warmth. I eventually agreed, and we started working on our book. He gave me his findings and went over the dig. They had found the resting place of a lost pharaoh. They once thought he was just a rumor, a tale to tell kids at night. It was said he had been cursed, and if he was ever found, he would bring destruction to the land we walked on.
"All superstitions,"
he told me. All they found was gold, and a lot of ancient texts that hinted at what life was like back then.
"These are the first texts we have found, intact and complete. They tell the real story. He wasn't cursed, but he had power beyond belief. If he ever walked the lands again, he would rule, yes, but with benevolence."
I remember thinking to myself that most rulers thought that of themselves. I almost commented on it, but I saw the look in his eyes as he pored over the material and I knew better. Let him believe the cursed king was nice, I thought. We spent months poring over the information, with him filling in the blanks every now and then. By the time we finished, I knew we had a prize winner on our table. I wanted to celebrate with a feast, but since we had spent so much time writing, we hadn't gone to the store in weeks. I scrounged around the freezer and came up with some meat and vegetables to make stew. We had so much meat now that he had stopped asking for hamburgers ever since coming home. I dumped everything in the pot and let it simmer for a while. The entire time, I couldn't help but think how happy I was now. Whatever had happened on his trip had been enough to change him. We even started talking about moving back to the city. I took a sip of my soup and smiled. Whatever I had grabbed from the freezer tasted delicious. I spooned some in a small bowl to bring it to him. That's when I saw the fingers floating among the vegetables. It looked shrunken and gray, but the ring around it was unmistakable. It was my husband's wedding ring. I stood there, staring at it, until I felt him behind me. I turned to see him, his eyes burning as he saw what I held. I thought of my husband, my real husband, and the horrors I had been through, and I shuddered. I thought of all the possibilities of what could have happened to my husband that would cause his fingers to be in my soup. I felt nothing. The thing before me was waiting, patiently, to see what I would do. I plucked the fingers from the pot, slipping the wedding ring off and tossing the finger in trash. I approached the thing that wore my husband's skin and grabbed his hands.
"Dinner will be ready soon,"
I said, holding its gaze as I slid the ring on his fingers. It has been a few days since then, and we have no mention of it to each other. I asked it to clean out the freezer and buy some fresh meat. Where he threw the contents away, I don't know, nor will I ask. Late at night, I often wonder what it looks like beneath my husband's flesh. Oftentimes, I wonder if the flesh will infect the thing and somehow my real husband will return like some kind of virus. On those nights, I lay awake, shivering in fear of the past and what could come if that happens. But always, the thing from the desert who wears his skin holds me, and I know I am safe. For now, the curse of the king stays with me and is not extended past my farm. For now.